It is my job to show up because I have the privilege of that title and ensure that I'm supporting, whether it's doing my best to secure a connection and open a door or to deal with a challenging situation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Intimate Talks interview series. I'm Efros, and our special guest today is Brenda Berger, a former CEO of Hanky Panky. Hi, Brenda. So nice to have you with us today.
Great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So Hanky Panky has been around for almost 50 years, right? Next
Right,
year will be 50 years of the brand.
right.
And it's iconic. And I've been watching the brand for last maybe 35 years. It made amazing progress. And the brand is kind of centered around one style of underwear, which is
Mm-hmm,
a thong. And
mm-hmm.
not even now, but absolutely back then, it wasn't a traditional style of underwear. It was a little bit controversial,
Mm-hmm.
but the brand was amazingly successful. So, can you please tell us the secret of Hanky Panky?
Well, I'm not sure that it's totally my secret to share. It's really the founders, Gail and Lita. But I would say from the seat that I was in, I saw two co-founders, two women dedicated to saying, we're designing to meet a need for women. What do they need? And it was not an overnight success. It took them time. They dedicated a lot of effort to just perfecting the craft of what would make it special. So from the lace to how it's dyed to even the amount of thread that's used in each single garment. It's a lot more than most would use. So I would say that it was relentless pursuit of providing comfort. It was at a time when pantsuits were becoming, much more of the norm in terms of women's wardrobe. So how do you have no visible panty line? It was done completely for comfort and the effectiveness of not having a panty line. And that took time and effort. And it was not one single thing. It was their dedication to women's comfort and understanding of what women needed and wanted, and then the relentless pursuit of what those little iterations needed, what had to happen over the course of years to get it to where it became a cult favorite.
Absolutely. So they went after comfort, so that
Mhm.
thong became very comfortable and different from every other style that was on the market, and that was very important.
Yeah, it was really, I think I've heard revolutionized. Many journalists, et cetera, have really described it as a phenomenon because of the shape of it, which of course has been knocked off by so many different brands. But it's just not the shape. It's so many components that went into it that make it special, that makes it pretty much untouchable today. Because it's also, there's a heavy cost that goes into producing, even though it's this little garment. There's so much that goes into it. And they were willing to make those sacrifices and the time. And it was, yes, for comfort, but also it was solving a problem. How do we wear a fitted pantsuit and not have our underwear show? And have those lines. And that was something that women cared about.
Absolutely. Well, that's my favorite style is the thong, because it's very versatile, especially for exercising in the gym, yeah,
Yeah.
to this day.
I'm glad that you know that because I think so many women think, oh, I can't wear that to the gym. It's lace. It's going to show through my yoga pants. And it doesn't. And it's
Yeah,
extremely
exactly.
comfortable. The gusset is, truly like 100% cotton. So there's a lot of absorption that's healthy, no chemicals. So there's a lot that makes it appropriate for multiple day to night, every occasion.
Absolutely. So there was a lot of thought and trial and error and craftsmanship that went into this,
Yes,
into the brand. So can you take us back to the time when you started with Hanky
sure.
Panky?
Sure. I was coming from an apparel background. So I had been working for a company called Ghost, which was a British brand that was transitioning from being in a multi-brand showroom, and they wanted to manage their own business in the United States, open up retail stores. And I had been there for a couple of years. And when I would talk to different retailers about what was doing well for them other than our brand, they started talking about this brand called Hanky Panky and how this little scrap of fabric was starting to gain some momentum. And I think probably within a couple of weeks of having that conversation with a couple of retailers mentioning the same brand, there was an ad in WWD because print was still the way we found out about job opportunities. And that led me to meet with the founders and then ultimately land the role. And it was really at the very beginning, not the beginning of the business, but it was about, I want to say, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks after the Wall Street Journal had put a front page article about Hanky Panky. So I was coming into a business that was predominantly specialty stores and maybe some private label. They had a lot of independent sales reps, and all of a sudden, they were inundated with it was becoming into the spotlight for all the stores that didn't carry the thong, because at the time they had a small department store distribution, but a thong was not something they ever tried or wanted in the store. And all of a sudden, everyone wanted it. And so for me, it was about dealing with the deluge of requests and demand for inventory that we did not have. So how do you make that shift? How do you allocate? How do you keep customers engaged and waiting for the delivery, which they all did. They weren't happy about it. So it was a really exciting time to join a company that had, been quietly successful for, well over 25 years. And then all of a sudden into the spotlight of the national conscience and wanting to have the brand.
I see. And so were you in marketing when you first started with Hanky Panky and PR?
Sales.
Sales.
Sales. Yeah, it was very much commercial management. That was my background. And in a way, it was really, I was in charge of the marketing as well, but the marketing was really making those decisions of where are you going to place an ad? Are you going to take out an ad in Vogue, or are you going to, then you started working with specialty stores if they had a flyer or a mailer that they wanted to put out, those type of very localized decisions. So not marketing in the sense of how we think of it now, but I was very much the commercial leader. That was my focus.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And you worked twice at Hanky Panky, right? Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So how long was your first run with the brand?
Sure. So my first tour was 9 years. And it was a really tremendous run, with the exception of a bit of a challenge in 2008 and 2009, but still a very strong foundation. And we fared very well during that time, regardless of the global economy. And then after 9 years, it was really time for me to gain some new experience. I was very much in an echo chamber. And while I adored the brand and the founders and everyone that worked at the company, I knew that for my own career trajectory, I needed a differentiated experience. And that's predominantly because I had intentions of being a musician, not a commercial executive, and definitely didn't foresee the opportunity to be a CEO. So I didn't have the traditional background of economics or an MBA. So I knew I needed to get one on the job in order to really grow my experience from all of the great learnings I had at the company the first round. So I had 2 different roles and some consulting in between, about 6 years altogether. And then I returned to the company first as co-CEO, and that was in the third quarter of 2019. And then a couple of years later as CEO.
Wonderful. I have so many questions about
Okay.
about your pause with Hanky Panky. You
Yeah.
mentioned that you learned so much about different culture. And you worked
Yeah.
with, you said Scandinavian companies. Can you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about that period?
Sure. So the period in between when I
Yes,
left and when I
yes.
returned. Yeah, I think the first company I worked at was a Danish jewelry brand. And that experience was really, for me, a lot about, I went from a brand that was doing extremely well year over year to a brand that had faced more challenges and really needed to do that shift from, majority wholesale to D2C, and then all the conflicts in between. And so it was tremendous learnings around inventory management, financial, contribution margin, ensuring you really understood where the growth and the profit was coming from. Also, they really wanted to build out their own retail network of stores. So that was a great opportunity for me to learn how to establish the concept, how to make sure, what the cost needs per square foot to ensure that you can run a store profitably over time. So a lot of tremendous learnings there. But also there was this new focus, at least new understanding for me on how you take care of employees, how you plan events, do things socially together, make sure that there is a special environment that you focus on, that it takes work to cultivate and create. And that was fairly new. There was something about the way we ran at Hanky Panky that was very much around the founders and how they operated that just naturally seemed to work at that time.
Mhm.
And this was a very intentional focus that was new to me. And then I think even more so, the next company that I went to, Happy Socks, which was a Swedish company, there they had it on the wall. Everywhere you went were these values that were put on the wall. And the number one was have fun. And honestly, that for me was like, aren't we here to get something done? How could it be that it was very, I mean, I guess it's probably not the right term, cognitive dissonance, but for me, it was just having fun. I mean, you do in a natural way when you're laughing with your coworkers or about something that's happened that no one could control. But I didn't think about it as an intention. And they kept talking about it. And so at one point I said, I'm not sure I'm the right person for this because certainly I'm there to get something done. And that's my expectation of the team. And then everyone goes home and does their own thing. And they said to me, no, we don't expect you to lead it, but we do expect you to participate and help us cultivate it. And from there, I had some great team leaders in the HR world that really showcased to me the importance of being thoughtful about how you plan, why it's important to have fun together. And I think now, all of the neuroscience shows that to be true, but it was certainly, I want to say foreign to me and that focus. And so that was really, I'm so glad I had that experience and understood and saw the impact on the employees and myself as well, and how that leads to just better conversations, even challenging ones, if you've been able to have a good time together. And I will say that even when I left the company, when I left Happy Socks, they threw a really fun party for me and really gave me a very considerate gift. And it just has always stuck with me that from the beginning to the end, that priority really helped infuse energy into the business, helped us when things were challenging. And I brought those lessons with me when I went back to Hanky Panky.
Amazing, right? What a concept, joy in the workplace, right? No.
Who knew? Who knew? People would be motivated by it.
Exactly. Well, I can relate. I'm coming from this very uh, world of doers and go-getters and overachievers. I call myself a recovering overachiever. So,
Oh. What are the tips to recovering? What do you need to do?
oh, to recover,
Yeah.
just cultivate mindfulness. That's what I'm trying to do for myself, and realization that even if I don't do anything, don't produce, don't
Mm-hmm.
create, I still have value. And I think that it was very new concept to me when I started.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about your comeback and
My
now
comeback.
coming back as a CEO of
Yeah.
Hanky Panky?
Well, it was, it was exciting. I think I would say that for me initially, as I thought about coming back, it can be a bit like, well, I've already dated this guy, and so you kind of know where maybe some of the challenges are, the pros and the cons. So it wasn't completely like an exciting new opportunity, but what was really exciting was that they were ready for change.
Mhm.
And I was much more ready from a production, financial, and operational standpoint, given the experience that I had, and was very, as we just discussed, focused on how do I bring a revitalized culture? Because one of the reasons I had the opportunity to come back was because there were some challenges and business was a bit challenging, and environment and how people were feeling. And they knew it because employees did have an open door to the founders. So there was a direct line of communication and they were aware of the challenges. And because I had been there before and because many of the employees I had worked with were still there, there was a request and an idea that I would be a great person to come back because I already knew so much about where the business had been and what some of the challenges might be. I couldn't possibly have been prepared for what was coming with COVID. I don't think anybody was, but at that time. So I would say that I really came in with my focus on, okay, what are the priorities
Mhm.
to reestablish growth in the business, healthy growth? What needs to be listened to? What are the customers telling us? What are the employees saying we need to be doing that we're not doing?
Mhm.
And then also prioritizing culture, because there was a New York office and an office in Queens. So you had a lot of people, half and half, pretty evenly divided around manufacturing and half around all of the other functions that make the business work. And there wasn't a lot of cross communication or really a sense of what are we trying to achieve other than what we just take for granted. And so I insisted that the first hire be a head of people and culture. And that would not have happened had I had not had this incredible interim break with the Scandinavian companies that put a focus on that. I learned a lot about you don't email as the CEO everyone in the company on the weekend, because then you ruin people's weekends, whether it's just a simple request or not. As the CEO, that culture of just always being on makes everyone feel like they have to always be on. And I learned that because all of a sudden I had CEOs that didn't send emails on the weekends, that didn't want you to send emails to employees, that there was for me a lot of external perspective that I was able to bring in to the company. And there was a lot of readiness for that shift and change, including transparency around how we each were operating our individual businesses and sharing that, developing a senior leadership committee, establishing a cadence of meetings on a regular basis. All of the things that I had been learning over the past few years, really bringing that to say, how can we turn this culture to be one that's really one team going in the same direction, marching towards the same KPIs,
Mhm.
and transparency on what the goals and how are we doing. So I instituted monthly town halls, and those morphed, but had them fairly regularly, almost every month for 4 years. And really, it was something you didn't always get feedback from the audience that you were speaking to.
Mhm.
But whenever we would do a survey saying, we're thinking of canceling them or only having them maybe once a quarter, there was a lot of, oh, no, wait, we might not be asking questions, but we show up at our lunchtime because we really want to hear and learn. And so we'd interview employees in the company so that manufacturing could learn about what was happening in the headquarters and vice versa. We'd share business results. How do we do to plan? Which channels were performing? What were our wins? Where do we need to work harder? When there were difficult, especially during COVID with layoffs and business challenges, we shared all of it. And it really enabled us to keep a lot of our employees in consistency over some very challenging years during COVID.
Oh, that's amazing. It's very different from what I heard, other companies were doing in terms of like being secretive and not sharing information, not CCing people on email. So what you are sharing is very refreshing and I think also very useful in terms of just, other CEOs and managers from other companies hearing that.
I think it was effective. And I think that it can be scary. What is when you're sharing too much?
Mm-hmm.
But people would rather know what is happening, I believe,
Yeah.
and know that things are challenging, know what's going on, knowing what are we planning to do about it, and who's involved, and how is it going to happen. And I can say that consistently sharing, not always great news, especially, there was a time period there when we had many supply chain challenges. People showed up every day because they knew there was nothing behind the hidden curtain. We were sharing it, and we opened the floor, ask questions, send in your questions if you don't want to ask them in front of everyone. And I think it was effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And the company was quite large, right? There were like 100 employees at this
Yeah, we
time.
were probably over 120 pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. And have you produced in Queens? Did you have factories in Queens?
There were sewing facilities. They weren't ours, but they were
Mm-hmm.
facilities that we worked with almost exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
And the Queens warehouse was really where we stored our raw materials and
Mm-hmm.
where Hanky Panky did a lot of their cutting.
Mm. Oh, that's quite amazing.
Yeah.
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 So let's talk about your position as a CEO.
Mhm.
You mentioned something that I loved, absolutely. You said that CEO is supposed to be three things. What are they?
Yeah. So that's not mine. And you'll forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of the author, but the book is really called The CEO Only Does Three Things.
Mm,
And I really listened to that book on many walks, but had that posted in front of me, which was, you know, you create energy in the company, you engage the talent that is working for you. So really make sure that you're getting the best out of them and elevating them, and you bring the energy so that they can do that, and you own the results. Ultimately, things, whether they're going right or they're going wrong, it's on you. Those results belong to you, and that's certainly challenging when they don't go the right way and when the results aren't great. But how do you engage the talent and really ensure that the team, okay, this isn't working, how do we collectively determine what should we be doing, where should we be putting our bets to switch the course of what is happening in the business? And that is, I think, before it could have been an annual process. Sometimes there were 3 5-year plans, and then COVID hit, and every year, every 6 months was a different story. So you have to be able to calibrate and still create the energy when things are really difficult,
mhm.
and take ownership for everything that goes wrong and right. Although to me, when things are going really right, you give credit to the team that made it happen. And when things are going wrong, you do need to hold people accountable, but ultimately it's on you for the lack of results.
Right. So how does it feel to be a CEO?
I think that for me, there's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes along with it, because everyone has an idea of how a CEO behaves or what it must mean. And you can meet complete strangers and you say, what do you do? And you simply say the term CEO, and there's a reaction. And so I think it can feel like, do I really belong in this seat at times? When you start comparing yourself, or you read about publicly traded companies and go, wow, how did they drive such incredible results, or do X, Y, and Z? And there's a lot of comparing that goes on. But I will say that some of the positives are really just easier to get doors opened at times, whether it's a phone call or a response. And I see that, and I saw that as my responsibility for the team. If sales was struggling to get a response from someone, or there was, a challenging issue, it is my job to show up because I have the privilege of that title and ensure that I'm supporting, whether it's doing my best to secure a connection and open a door, or to deal with a challenging situation. So I think it's never one thing on any one day, but it's also just a great privilege to lead people, and it's a great responsibility. And at the same time, you're still that same person that is, dealing with a kitchen full of dirty dishes, or, you're never the CEO at home. I can tell you that. If you're a CEO at work, you're certainly not the CEO at home.
Right.
It's a very different person, much less willingness for collaboration than when you're a CEO at work.
Yes. Um, and so what's in the future for you? And
Well,
how do you feel about the next chapter of your life?
I have been spending a lot of time thinking about the next chapter of my life, and I'm excited because I have been defined. I've been part of this amazing brand for a very long time, which was a privilege and an honor. And now it's at this stage in life, the opportunity to really think about how to go into what am I really looking for? How do I want to spend my time? What type of businesses would I like to work with? What are the things that really lit me up during this experience? And I can tell you that the sale process of a company, it was such a tremendous learning, and it was so hard and so great all at the same time that I keep thinking about that as an opportunity go forward. So there's many different lanes that I think I could go in, but I just don't know which one it is going to be yet. And I'm really grateful for just having a few weeks, which I haven't had in a long time, to decompress, to do the things that really bring me joy. And I've had more industry conversations of people that are in this industry, including people like yourself, that I did not have time for, or I didn't make the time for when I was going through such a busy time at Hanky Panky. And I think I'm really impressed with this industry and how people reach out, and how there's just endless opportunities to support one another and help each other land wherever they need, where you want to go next. And it is an intimate world. So I think that just spending time making connections and talking to people, and realizing that it seems that there is a hunger for perspective on leadership and what it takes to make a brand, and how things are shifting. That while I'm not the founder of the brand, I did observe how they worked, how they operated, what made them special. And I feel that I've absorbed a lot of that and a lot of those learnings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so what brings you joy besides working?
Well, it did bring me, as a Canadian, and I'm from the prairies. So I'm originally from Saskatchewan. A strong work ethic was absolutely the pinnacle of achievement. So it is hard for me to slow down and think about, do I still have value when I'm not doing something? And so I'm on a similar journey in that area. But what I really have been enjoying is still singing and participating in choirs and practicing on my own. And I also have refound my love for playing the piano. So I'm going back to some of those eighth grade pieces that I spent hours working on, and relearning them is really painful.
Mm.
I do enjoy cooking, and I'd like to learn how to make bread and how to bake. There's something intimidating about dough for me, but I've been cooking a lot. And I just recently moved to the Hudson Valley. So certainly doing a lot of hiking and walking, and then looking for how to be involved politically and socially in my new community. How can I contribute? How can I serve and be a volunteer and have some impact? So that's really what I'm focusing on right now.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, Brenda. It was absolutely amazing. I finally got to meet you.
Yes,
And
again, so many people I have not intersected with. So
yeah.
pleasure to meet you as well. And thank you for having me. And thank you for the thoughtful questions.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I wish you best of luck with everything you dream of for yourself. And I know that you will get it.
Thank you so much. You as well.